Hey there, and welcome back to Don't Open That Door. Come along with our triumvirate of terror as we descend into darkness, hurtle into horror, and plunge into peril. If you've ever thought it was pronounced ballot, you're in the right place. I'm Justin, and I can do the splits.
Can you really?
Yeah, martial arts for years, and I still keep up, so.
Oh, I'm Nico, and so can I, actually.
Well, I'm Dan, and I can't.
Well, we're here today to review Black Swan. This was directed by Darren Aronofsky, starring Natalie Portman as Nina, Mila Kunis as Lily, Winona Ryder as Beth, Vincent Cassell as Toe-maa, which is written as Thomas, but it's Toe-maa, and Barbara Hershey as Erica. So we open with Nina, a shy ballerina with the New York Ballet Company who lives with her very, very, very obsessive and overbearing mom. More on that later. The company's starting this year's ballet season, which, as an aside, I did not know they had, but they're starting the season with Swan Lake. Nina really wants to get the role of the Swan Queen because that'd be like a really big deal. Unfortunately for her, though, her issue is basically this. She's perfect for one half of the role, being the white swan, but she struggles with representing the other half of the role, the kind of sensual, seductive black swan. And this kind of shows when she gives a lackluster audition. At this point in time, we're also introduced to Lily, a ballerina who just joined up with the company and is like mad charismatic and whatnot. But Dan, speaking of charismatic, I need you to chime in here. What happens next?
So after Nina thinks things over, the following day she meets up with the director of the ballet, Toe-maa, which is spelled like Thomas but pronounced Toe-maa.
Oh, okay.
To ask him for the role.
I appreciate that.
He explains that she just doesn't embody the black swan, and he even forces a kiss on her, but then she bites him. Surprisingly, though, he actually gives Nina the leading role. She is thrust into the spotlight, much to the jealousy of her fellow ballerinas, and her mother continues to obsessively control every aspect of her life. During rehearsals, Nina continues to struggle with embodying the black swan. She stays late one day, crying, and Lily comes to have a chat with her where Nina tells her some of her problems.
Well, one person you can always tell your problems to is actually not here right now, but we'll settle for you, Nico. What happens next?
Always glad to be a backup. Unfortunately, things don't work out super well because Lily speaks to Toe-maa, which is spelled like Thomas, but pronounced Toe-maa.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he just makes things worse for Nina. This causes some friction between Lily and Nina. So later that night, Lily shows up to Nina's apartment and asks her out for drinks. It's kind of like, hey, I'm sorry, just want to make it up to you. And Nina's mom objects, but Nina goes out. The pair drink, do some E, and hook up with some fellas. Then Nina and Lily then seemingly head back to Nina's place, lock themselves in Nina's room, and, well, they fuck, you see.
Well, the following morning, much like myself, Nina wakes up alone and realizes that she's late for rehearsal. She books it over there, but actually finds Lily playing her role. Toe-maa, which is spelled Thomas but is pronounced Toe-maa, is a big fan of Lily's free-spirited movements that clearly juxtapose with Nina's. Nina confronts Lily asking why she left, but Lily's like, yo, I never went home with you. And as an aside here, see, Nina's been kind of hallucinating for this whole movie, kind of played that down a little bit. And she hallucinates like Lily and a kind of black swan version of herself. But now these hallucinations are getting more frequent and kind of worse. So she does what I guess Dan would do, and she goes home and goes to sleep.
Yep.
True.
She wakes up with her mother in the room, and her doorknob is gone. Her mom says that she called the company and told them that Nina was sick, but Nina's not having it. She has a fight with her mom, claiming that she's going to move out. Then she grabs the doorknob, uses it to unlock the door like it's Resident Evil, and then dips.
For context, she was locking her in her room. It's not like she woke up, where's the doorknob, guys? Just everything else is normal, but there's no doorknob.
Well, Nico, since you're the man with the explanations here, what happens when she gets to the ballet?
So she gets there and she begins to put on her makeup, and the director says that he's already told Lily, who is her alternate, that she would be going on. But Nina's like, nah, I'm gonna do it. And impressed with her assertiveness, Toe-maa, which is spelled Thomas but pronounced Toe-maa, he allows it. The play begins, and Nina has a mishap with the Swan Prince, which causes her to fall. And she goes back to her room and sees Lily in there. They have a fight, and Nina stabs her, seemingly killing her. She then dons her makeup as the Black Swan and goes out and kills the performance, much like she killed Lily. She then goes back to her room to change, back into the White Swan, and bam, Lily shows up out of nowhere. What?
We need some solidity in these tough times. Dan, explain this.
Yeah, so as it turns out, Nina actually never killed Lily. That was just a hallucination. In reality, she actually stabbed herself. Ouch. So, as any sane person would do, she goes out and finishes the play to rapturous applause. She also kisses the director. Oh wait, she was still stabbed. She begins to bleed out as Toe-maa, which is spelled like Thomas, but pronounced Toe-maa. Asks her what she did.
See.
Nina replies that she was perfect. Then the movie fades to white. The end.
Well, nothing to it but to do it, lads. Let's get started. How does this movie look? And I'll take the lead here. This is one of those movies that the cinematography is pretty nice. It uses this pretty cool kind of black-white color scheme, namely when they're kind of dealing with the black and white swan. Who saw that coming?
Oh-ho!
But I also like, there was a little rave scene when she was, rolling on some E. That was pretty cool. I like that scene too. And just as like a general note, I'm not one for the ballet, more on that later, but I found that with my plebeian knowledge, the movement seemed natural. But Dan, I'm going to doff the cap to your wizened brow and ask you what you thought about the way this movie looked.
I'll don the cap on my wizened brow and continue on with your explanation of the black and white juxtaposition there. I liked it. And even outside of the context of the ballet, they continued that kind of scheme too. Like you're saying, like the club scene, Natalie Portman or Nina is always wearing white, and then Lily gives her like a black dress to wear and kind of symbolizing, I'm exposing you to like opening yourself up and loosening up a little bit. So throughout the whole movie, they kind of play on that black and white theme, which I thought was pretty cool.
Right. Nico, where do you sit with this visual?
So I really like the visuals for the little that they had. I think they made a lot out of them. The cinematography, like Justin was saying, is really nice. I like, particularly in combination with the sort of like long, narrow hallway shots that we get a lot with just very minimal sort of approach to things, but just making the object of whatever Nina is looking at appear just ever so slightly out of focus and questionably looking like her. I really liked that as a sort of subtle, subliminal sort of way to imply her mental state.
Now, let's move straight into sound here. Dan, what'd you think of the score?
I liked it. It was very classical, very orchestral. I also liked a lot of the sound design. They really like hyper focused on little things. So for instance, sometimes the camera would zoom in on the ballet or ballerinas like feet and their toes and that kind of footwork that they're doing. And you would very clearly hear their toes sort of like crunching and cracking and things like that. Or whenever she would like rip her skin off her finger or something, you would really, really hear that. So they really focused on sort of those details to kind of, I guess, like bring you into that like more intimate moments maybe. But I thought that was a cool, interesting choice.
I also really like the visuals with the CGI, particularly with how they got Natalie Portman to kind of, well, she's essentially molting throughout the whole movie, if you want to think about it like that, with the feathers and everything. And I really thought that was just kind of disturbing in a way that I wasn't expecting. And it's just, there's something very uncanny about it that I like. I don't know.
And I guess kind of to rope this into this section too, this movie's got a lot of mirrors in it and a really prominent usage of them. Anyone want to elaborate on that, speak on that a little bit?
So I am thinking about all the connotations that mirrors have and sort of like symbology of mirrors. And I think it has to do a lot with that idea of the uncanny and the idea of there being doppelgangers, these sort of entities that are almost exact copies of you, if not exact copies of you. And there can only be one. There can only be one Highlander kind of
I watched
deal.
that movie last night. Keep going.
Did you really?
Yeah, me and Bonner.
Nice. I still haven't seen that. Really need to.
Oh, you finally finished the 10 Commandments?
Bro.
The Ben Commandments.
10 Commandments.
Anyway, it has to do with the sort of juxtaposition between trust in your own agency and your own perception and the trauma that is sort of like creating all of these hallucinations and psychoses that are going on in her head and having those manifest for her in ways that are simultaneously there and not. You know, it's in a mirror. It's not actually physically present until much later on when she's manifesting into, or not manifesting, metamorphosing into the Black Swan. But I really liked how it was. I really love whenever mirrors are featured in a film well, and this did that.
Nico's got that ocular kink going on here.
Oculus.
Maybe both. But I want now to ask a question that we often ask on the pod, but today I feel a fire in my belly when I'm talking about it here. What kind of horror is this? I will posit a theory here, if you will. A theorem I designed over countless seconds. Brett, I don't find this to be horror in the
I
slightest.
knew you were going to say that.
In the least.
I was waiting for it.
There was a hint on the pre-production notes. I don't know if you might have caught the hint of how I felt about that, but
Pray tell, go on.
so I don't think this is horror. I think this is, and this is just in my mind how I do this, but
And you're wrong, but go on.
I think there is a clear separation between, like, you can have psychological horror, but I don't think everything that is psychological is horror. And I mean, for me, I don't think this movie really had any scenes of terror, like not one scene of terror in this movie where the design was to scare or impart fear to the audience. I don't think so. And just as like a general note, I feel like the movie is largely about Nina dealing with her mental issues.
I mean, it is.
I don't see the horror in this at all.
This is absolutely psychological horror with some, I think you could argue, prestige horror mixed in there as well. I don't know how you don't see any aspects of horror in this. That is just
Name one scary scene. Name one scary scene.
When her fucking knees buckle and she looks like a fucking bird and she hits her head, and that was creepy, and like that was body horror, man. It's not body horror in the sense that you would think about it with like the fucking Cronenberg movies we've seen, but that's absolutely body horror.
I don't think so. That happens in Howl's Moving Castle too, bruh. So you're gonna have to give me something more than that.
Bro, fuck off. That is not even close to being a good comparison. Try again.
It is. Trust me, I'm being real. Like, the same exact thing happens in that movie, and I wouldn't call that movie horror. Is there anything else?
Yeah, the appearance of all of the manifested sort of hallucinations that she's experiencing, the general atmosphere of clearly being in a hostile, traumatic living experience and working experience, I would argue, is horrific. And combining that with her vivid hallucinations that make it difficult for us to discern what is really going on, I find all of that to be horrific.
So to be clear, there were no additional scary scenes.
There were scenes that were scary. I don't know.
Like what? Like what? Name one.
When she wakes up and her fucking mom is there, when she's jacking it, are you kidding me? That's scary.
Her mom was asleep.
I don't give a damn. You're telling me if you woke up and started jacking it and looked over and your mom was like 5 feet away from you, you wouldn't be fucking horrified?
No, I'd be like, how did I miss my mom sleeping 5 feet away from you before I started beating it off?
I mean, true, but also like, That scared me, dude. I can't imagine that.
You know what's funny? To me,
There were also actual jump scares in this. They didn't have the like visual component of it so much, but they had this sound, which, as we've established multiple times on here, is the primary component of a jump scare.
well, one second, back to the scene you talked about being scary. That was actually one of those scenes that is kind of one of those camera trick scenes, because from where her mom was sitting and from where she was sleeping, there's no way she didn't see her mom in her peripheral when she woke up. So like, that's why it's kind of like, yeah, from us as the audience looking through the camera, like, yes, it's a surprise the mother is there, but the mom was like in her peripheral the whole time. She was just like so taken up that she maybe just didn't notice, but
So I can't speak to whether or not she actually like turned her head and looked or whatever. That's possible. But I'm just speaking to the fact that like being alarmed at that, like that is an alarming scene. That it was something that was scary to me.
bruh, if you find well, listen, I'm gonna say this, bruh. I don't.
If I find the idea of being walked in on by my mother, yes,
No, she
that's
wasn't
ter-
walked in on.
or like
She wasn't walked
surprised
in on.
somehow. This is getting way the fuck off topic.
It is getting off, isn't it?
It is getting off.
I hate
But Dan,
this.
what kind of
I
horror
hate
do
it.
you place this in?
So I'm inclined to agree with Justin on this one. I don't really think that this is horror. I think it's
See, that's
like,
okay that you think that, Dan. I
oh,
would
yeah,
like to
yeah,
hear more.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
I
of
feel
course.
like it's more of a psychological drama that has some tense moments, but I don't think that there's any like horrific scenes. I mean, like, yeah, her knees buckling in, but I mean, we see worse than that in action movies. Just because there happens to be something that is semi-violent doesn't mean it's automatically horror, or just like something that is alarming or horrifying doesn't necessarily mean it's horrific. I mean, like, sure, if my parents walked in on me or whatever when I was doing it, like, yeah, that would be a
I hate that we're
horrifying
focusing
experience.
so much on this.
You called it. You called
I
it, sir.
know.
It
I
ain't
know.
horror. So I'm inclined to agree with Justin.
I've been betrayed by my own.
I'll have something sent to you in the mail, Dan, for appreciation.
Oh yeah. Oh, thank you. I expect it post haste.
Oh, it will be there post haste. So, moving on from this now, I want to talk about some themes, some thematics, if you will, in this movie. So let's go ahead and pelt some out here. Nico, what are some themes in this movie?
So there are a lot of them, like you said. I want to start off with the idea of perfection being a really, really prominent feature in this film. There's so much of the dialogue surrounds that idea of being perfect, of achieving this impossible zenith of just I don't even know how to describe it other than just literally perfect. There's literally no other way that you could improve. And the idea of being able to actually attain that versus the real physical limitations of a human being and what that looks like when under pressure from multiple different angles is a really fascinating sort of framing device, I think, particularly in such a competitive setting that this is in. It reminds me a lot of, honestly, it reminds me of Whiplash, if either of you have seen that.
Funny that you should say that. A little spoiler for what I'm going to say at the end. I think the Whiplash, to me, embodies a lot of what this movie does, but a lot fucking better, in my opinion. So, funny that you should say that, though, Nico, because I agree. I do see Whiplash.
It's funny or interesting talking about perfection because I almost have, I don't quite want to say the opposite, but a very different take on that. Because one of the things that stood out to me about this movie was art and how art is an expression of life and your emotions and how it's not meant to be perfect. The director was not looking for perfection. Only Nina was. She was the only one who wanted, she said, I'm trying to be perfect. And he was like, no, you need to loosen up. You need to like,
Yeah.
I like Lily because she's not perfect. And like the Black Swan is emotional. Like you're supposed to draw me in. And that's what art is really about. And unfortunately, I think this is one thing that I think is true, but also can very easily and very often be pushed to the extreme of like art. In order to express yourself in whatever art medium you are, you have to live life and you have to experience things. And a lot of times that gets pushed to the extreme of like, oh, I have to be a starving artist. I have to be depressed. I have to be, push myself to the brink of whatever, which
Right.
isn't always true. And, Nina was really pushing herself to be that, and she didn't necessarily have to. And I mean, different people are going to do it different ways and whatever. So maybe for her, she did. I don't know. But, it was an interesting look at art and expression of art and what you as the artist expect versus what the audience and what everyone else expects, because they don't always expect perfection.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. That's very true. I want to cheat here and talk about two things, kind of. So, first, being manipulation, because realistically speaking, Nina herself is manipulated right up until the very end. And there's like people doing this in different ways. Her mother is an example of like, for example, there's a time where she wants to give her some cake as a celebration, and Nina's like, I don't want too much cake right now. Which, side note, Nina also purges kind of semi-regularly in this movie to maintain a certain figure and shape, and that's part of it. But her mom's like, oh, you can have this as a celebration, whatever else. And then when she's like, I really don't want it, her mom's like, well, then it's horrible, it's trash. And she goes to like throw the whole cake away, which is very manipulative of her, because then Nina's like, oh, I'm so sorry, Mom. Like, of course, I'll take some of that cake. And I mean, like, everyone, like, I think even obviously the director, Toe-maa, he,
And how's that spelled?
For clarification.
oh yeah, like Thomas,
Oh, okay.
Okay, got it.
but he regularly crosses the line of professionalism and just kind of like sexual harassment and assault. And
Yeah.
I bet you, if that was a real person and you asked, he would say, like, well, why'd you force a kiss on her? I did it for the art. Like, I could see him saying that about,
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's people like that in real life. This is something that absolutely happens.
oh, yeah. But I'm saying, like, that's another way, because he wants her to me, there's like two coinciding things here between her and the director. The first is he has a reputation for the star ballerina. He's also like, excuse the expression, but he's piping down on the side. This happened with the previous one, and this is also what he wants to happen with Nina too. So that's like part A. Part B is he also, as part of the play, wants her to be more sexually overt, and he wants her to be more like Lily in essence. And like, he intertwines the two in how he approaches her and how he does that to manipulate her to try and become who he wants her to be. And then also, I'm gonna keep it real with you, I feel like Lily was a little manipulative, because I think there's like a debate that I've had with people before about whether Lily is actually her friend or not. And I feel like she isn't, because I think she purposely took her out for drinks, knowing that that's not really her environment. And she purposely, gave her E and everything else like that. Because think about it, she was going to go on the next day and you got your friend doing drugs. That's not what you would do. So that's me, though. That's my take on it, personally. Very, very, very personally.
I also just want to very quickly interject that the person Justin was talking about, the previous star, that is Winona Ryder as Beth, because we straight up did not mention her at all in their synopsis.
Yeah, I ain't gonna front. Her storyline kind of peters out. It seems like she's gonna be really important at the start. And then I feel like she has that accident, air quotes, where she loses the use of her leg, and then she's just not in the movie anymore.
But she is, though.
What else does she do?
She's in the hospital, and she
Yeah, that's what I mean.
stabs herself in the... Okay, fair.
Like, she doesn't really impact the plot anymore, I should say.
I think she does thematically.
Yeah.
Maybe not directly, but I mean,
Yeah, like she's representative of the cycle of abuse.
That, and yeah, and her arc is Nina's arc, basically.
Yeah. Like, the entire movie is foreshadowed. I think we all know this when we get the explanation at the beginning of how the Swan Lake play, or Queen, whatever the fuck it's called. We know that's going to be what happens. So I think seeing that being enacted in a cycle is something that adds to the depth of those themes and the depravity of Toe-maa.
Wait. How's that spelled?
How's that spelled?
I gotta write it down real quick.
Okay, so it's like T home ass.
Oh, home ass.
Okay, that's fair.
T home ass.
That's fair. So, real quick, so this movie, it's got some unreliable kind of narration almost, where there are times where we question if things are real or aren't real. And how do you like that in this movie? Do you think it's done well? Do you think it's not done well?
I thought it was done well.
I love that shit personally, and I think it was done very well. My favorite moment there's a lot of moments, but one of my favorite moments in the film is towards the end when Nina realizes that she actually didn't kill Nina, but other way around, but she stabbed
Lily.
herself, and she did kill Nina. Haha. Haha. Maybe that was intentional. It wasn't. I'm gonna be real with you, but no, I really like the trope of having in just various forms of media, whether it's movies, TV, video games. Like, I enjoy unreliable narrators and unreliable perspectives. I think it gives a lot of depth to a story when it's done well, and I think the way that we're seeing so much flashes of Nina's psychosis in and out had a sort of really fluid interchange between what was real and what was not. So I love that shit.
I thought it was kind of meh. Like, I thought that there were points where I was like, all right, like, this is obviously real. This part's obviously fake. And like, to me, there wasn't as much as I would have liked of a confusion of whether it's real or not. Like, I kind of wanted that dial turned up a little bit more personally. But
when Lily and Nina were taking it down to Bone Town, you knew that was fake?
yeah,
How?
because when they walk in, the mom is looking not in any direction. She doesn't mention or reference Lily whatsoever. She's looking directly at Nina and says, do you know what time it is? Do you know how long you've been out? And da-da-da-da, whatever else. And then Nina and Lily, air quotes, run into the room, and the mom doesn't say anything about the two of them. Like, she only ever references Nina. And considering her reaction to Lily earlier, where she like didn't even want Nina associating with her, there's no way she would have flipped out on Lily. 100% she would have flipped out on Lily if Lily had brought her daughter home drunk and high. Absolutely. 0% doubt in my mind.
Agreed.
So you didn't see that coming, did you?
I didn't.
So here's another thing you didn't see coming, maybe. Does this movie remind you of anything else we've watched for the pod?
I'm just waiting to hear what you're about to say now because I'm curious.
So to me, this movie heavily reminds me of Perfect Blue.
I was just going to say that, yeah.
And you want to know who else is a really big fan of Perfect Blue and Satoshi Kon?
Darren Aronofsky?
Darren Aronofsky. He went so far as at one point in time, he wanted to do a remake of Perfect Blue. He actually, even in Requiem for a Dream, there's a scene where it's literally a shot for shot of one of the scenes in Perfect Blue. So he is a massive fan of Perfect Blue.
As he should be.
Now, where I run into a little bit of problem is he has publicly denied the influence of Perfect Blue on this work, stating other, kind of things instead.
He mentioned Fyodor Dostoevsky's
Yes.
Double, as well as the
Yes.
actual play, the Black Swan or Swan Prince Queen, whatever the fuck itself.
Swan Lake.
Yeah, sure. Swan, something.
Swan City.
From my perspective, I can't help but feel like this movie takes quite a bit, I think, from Perfect Blue. And to me, it comes off as like a kind of a little bit of like a limp version of it to me at times. But I do think it's interesting to note the pretty heavy Perfect Blue influence in Aronofsky's films. Well, in Requiem for a Dream, you couldn't really deny that one. That was shot for shot. But in this one, he never really mentions it, but it's pretty clearly a pretty big influence. Like, as soon as I saw this movie, I was like, bro, this is like Perfect Blue. This definitely reminds me of Perfect Blue in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I can see that. I wasn't thinking about it when I was watching it, but I see it. I definitely see it.
So now it's time for the what would you do? And before we do that, I'm gonna say this right fast. Since we're all musicians here, let's kind of flip the script a little bit.
Okay.
Let's say that you're, Dan, you can pick whatever instrument you want for this. But Nico, let's say, you're kind of auditioning to join this like really sick metal band on, guitar. And for me, it'd be like, I'm auditioning for vocals or whatever. But like, Dan, you're auditioning for a pianist, you know what I mean? You got the sick guitar going on, you know what I mean?
Hell yeah.
Yo, I want a fucking guitar.
I'll shred that shit.
So let's say, we're at this really big audition and there's kind of like, they want like one specific person for this, one specific role, akin to kind of, Swan Lake. How hard or how obsessed would you think you'd become over a role like that? I know the metaphor doesn't quite work out 100%, but let's just say it was super fucking important. How hard would you obsess over that?
Probably a lot. Like, if this was a group that I really, really fucked with and was vibing with, and it was like a really prestigious, well-known thing, I would be super psyched. I mean, I'm trying to think of an equivalent to equivalent from ballet to, I don't know, like the metal scene or something, but maybe it would be like if I auditioned to be the new guitarist of Symphony X or some shit, I'd be like, hell fucking yeah.
The only thing I can really think about in a kind of equal to in music sense, and this is from my limited knowledge, is, like for classical musicians, when they're, like if you're auditioning for like first chair or some shit like that, like, like it's just you, like you are the chosen one, you know what I mean? For that particular role. But that being said, Dan, how much did you obsess over it?
I probably would for a bit. Maybe not quite to that level, but like, yeah, I'd go hard.
And I also, too, I tend to get pretty... I would definitely, if I was really trying for it, I think it would consume me to a certain extent. Now, this is a 2-in-1. First, do you get stage fright?
Not even a little.
Neither me.
I do, but I know how to combat it.
Because this goes with my next question. At what point, like, let's say, for example, like you started just getting super paranoid about the whole deal. Maybe someone's out to get me, take my role. At what point do you say, I got to break this off for my own personal good?
I think I don't know, man. I really don't know. I truly, honest to God, don't know. Like, if it's something where I was in a position where I had a chance to be doing something that was my passion and I had the chance to become extremely well renowned and like make a living off of that, and it was my dream, I feel like it would be really difficult to discern like when it got too out of hand. But I got to imagine that I wouldn't surprise stab myself.
Fair enough. Dan, how about you?
So for me, I learned it the hard way. I would stop obsessing over it the night before. I've kind of learned that through like practicing for juries and finals and whatnot, that like you can practice all night if you want, and that morning those hours aren't going to make a difference.
Yeah.
Because like at that point the night before, it is what it is, and it's more important to get rest and like calm down and mentally prepare. Like those last handful of hours, just you're not going to like remember that long term. You're not going to, it just doesn't work, at least for me. So yeah, the night before I would just, be practicing and then just stop, 7, 8 o'clock, whatever. I'm like, all right, I'm done, and it'll be what it'll be.
Yeah. I'm a big believer, and this is for me my answer on this. I'm a big believer in trusting myself. I have a lot of faith in myself to come through in certain situations. And even if I don't and I mess up, to me, especially like in my life and kind of the choices I've made and shit like that, like there's always a way. Like you're never out of the game totally, unless you're not breathing. That's the only way. Otherwise, you're never out of the game totally. That is my firm belief. And that's kind of how I move. So like, and I realize this isn't anywhere near on the level, but like, let's say, like I got a show and, I got some lyrics I got to memorize, right? These could be songs that I haven't even fucking looked at in like a year. Oh shit. I want to bring this out of the vault. Like, I'll think about it. I'll memorize it. I mean, y'all have seen me like right before a show kind of do like a pre-run before we head out.
Yeah.
But that's it. Like, I might do a little pre-rehearsal, but I'm not staying up all night thinking about it. And y'all have seen me literally the day before shows and shit. So like, it's not something that I would really obsess with. I agree with you, Dan. It is more important to make sure you're mentally sound because you'll do better no matter what at that point in time. So that was mad wholesome. But I want to turn now to the critic review. Where do you guys think this sits on Rotten Tomatoes? This fucking critic bait. Where do you think this sits?
97.
85.
Nah, Nico, you fucking around too much now. It's 85.
This time I did check just to make you mad.
I was already mad.
I could tell with your conviction
Yep.
and the nonchalantness of your conviction.
Uh-huh.
This was also, audience was right with them, at an 84. But I'm not concerned with critics. Fuck them. I'm not concerned with anyone. Let's just talk about ourselves here. Where do you guys put this movie? And just give me your general thoughts on it.
I think this movie's fucking great. I love this kind of shit. And I'm going to give it an 86. I've already said the rest of my bit. I love this shit.
Dane, where you at with it?
I think it was a great movie. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good representation and asked a lot of questions about performance and a lot of the themes that we had kind of talked about before. I don't think it was a perfect movie, but I think it did a good job of raising those kind of questions. I'm going to say 84.
Bro, I fucking hate this movie. Oh my God. I'm about to let it out. I hate this movie, bro. Like, son, I seen this movie when it dropped in 2010. I went to the movie theater. I was fucking lied to. My girlfriend at the time showed me, there was like in the trailer that like, I think like Mila Kunis and Natalie Portman or something were about to kiss. Either she told me that or like something else.
it does happen, so.
Me being a dumbass at that point in my life.
Not lied to.
Let's fucking go see it. Let's fucking go see it.
I mean, that's on you, dude, at
Yeah.
this point.
Listen,
Well, you thought it was going to be some fucking lesbian sapphic film?
son, I thought I was about to get like blue is the warmest color or something out here. But no, let me tell you this, okay? All in all, I think this movie is not great. I think that this movie, let me put it like this. If you want to see some really well executed points from this movie, watch Perfect Blue for all the psychological shit and watch Whiplash if you want to see a movie with like an abusive teacher, instructor, and all that shit like that. Those two movies combined, like, shits all over this movie. Totally and obscenely so. Violently.
Ah, yes. In order to be better this movie, you have to have two movies be combined together.
Well, no, I'm saying like to fully explore all the different themes. I mean, don't get me wrong. Perfect Blue alone destroys this movie, no questions asked. For me personally, there's three things I really don't like about this movie.
That's it.
Thing number one, and this is just me as a person, I don't fucking like ballet. And I don't mean that in a macho sense, but I mean that in the sense of like, to me, ballet doesn't make any fucking logical sense to me as to why it exists in 2022. This episode's going to drop in 2023, actually. But the point being is the performers have to oftentimes physically hurt themselves, mentally hurt themselves, to the point where I'm convinced it's just not worth it. Like, I've been part of sports and stuff, or like martial arts, where like, you know, I mean, I was made to do push-ups on my knuckles on the concrete until they bled to build up strength. And I don't feel that is anything compared to what ballerinas have to go to. That shit with the feet, bruh. I have fucking lost whole ass toenails playing soccer. And I feel like that ballerina shit is worse. Okay?
Yeah, ballet's fucking intense to those of y'all who don't know.
Like, that shit to me, I'm like, nah, bruh. To me personally, the toll is not worth it. It's not worth it. That's phase one. So I was already kind of like predisposed to not fucking with it. Thing number two, I think that like the biggest, baddest ideas in this movie are already done in Perfect Blue, and reading into it and finding out how big a fan he was of Perfect Blue to the point where he wanted to buy the rights so that he could make a live action. And then I think he basically like fused Perfect Blue, but instead of going like the idol route, he went the ballet route. Like, to me, that's what that was. I mean, Nico, you talked about the use of mirrors in this movie. Literally, Perfect Blue did the same shit. There's very little in this movie that I couldn't say, hey, Perfect Blue did the same thing. Overbearing mother figure? Yeah, that was the idol manager who was overbearing and tried to manage every single aspect of her life. Like, I'm sorry, I can't escape that fact. So to me, like, this movie was lauded as like some kind of like uber creative thing.
It was what now?
It was lauded.
Lauded?
That's how I see it. And also, thing 3, I have a very, very, very specific gripe here with this movie, but I realize now I can't say it because people will then know the secret.
Wow.
And then it'll all be over from
What
there.
is
bro.
wrong with you, dude?
I'm just putting it out there and letting the world know. But yeah, I didn't think it was a horror movie. I didn't think his drawing was scary. Honestly, we should have never reviewed this on the pod. You tricked me, Nico. You deceived me.
I didn't.
Nico over there in his
There
red
was
hell
no
ass Satan
deceit.
room. If anyone
Wait,
can see
wait.
the red lights going on behind Nico right now, he's in hell.
Wait.
Because he's the devil.
So
because he made me watch
You've
this.
been fooled twice by this movie then, huh?
I have.
What's that
I
saying?
have.
Fool me
Listen.
once, shame on you.
Shame on you. Listen, fool me twice. Shame on me. Shame on me, dear listener. Shame on me.
Yeah,
God's put up with
honestly.
this.
Fool me 3 times, fuck the peace sign. Load the chopper, let it rain down on you.
So all in all, this movie is going to get. This movie's gonna get a 55 for me.
That's exactly what I was expecting you would say.
And that score is for the performances of the actors involved. And it's for the crew that assembled the cinematography, did a lot of the visuals, did a lot of the sound. Because while I take a lot of issues with the plot, the writing, and stuff like that in this, there is no denying the skill that was put into a lot of the sound design, the sound workings. I mean, Mila Kunis and Natalie Portman spent months practicing ballet
Yeah.
to be able to do these roles, I should say. So I think that should be appreciated. So that's why I'm not giving it like a total shit score. But yeah, I'll fuck with the movie heavy. But I'm ready, internet. Lay your fucking hate on. Well, first, sorry. Does this movie get a recommend?
Yes.
Guess what?
I'm going to say yes. You're going to say yes.
Yes. Only so you can see this and then realize how much better Perfect Blue is after. But
Savage.
Damn.
not going to get the golden seal from me. Probably you, Nico. Probably you. Dan, I don't know about you. I don't know.
I don't think so. Close, but not quite.
All right.
I would have given it though.
Well, internet, I'm ready for your hate. Lay it on me. I am on Twitter at DOTD Horror, but we also have Instagrams and Facebook. So, you can talk to Nico or Dan and tell them how much I suck. Again, that's at DOTD Horror on Instagram. That's also Don't Open That Door on Facebook. Plus our website, that's dotdhorror.com. But lay it on me. Tell me I'm wrong. Or tell me I'm right, because you a hater too, just like me. Either way, make sure that you take care of yourselves and those around you. Make sure that if you start seeing black swans, you talk to someone about that. But as always, dear listener,
They do exist, just in case you didn't know. That's not a thing they made up for the movie. Black swans do real. Black swans do real.
they do not do real. They do not. There's no such thing as a black swan.
Okay, hold on. I'm about to blow your fucking gourd, my guy.
Well, Nico's gonna blow his gourd.
No,
but till then,
yours.
dear listener, don't open that door. Bye.